right, kiddos. So today we are talking about the French and Indian War. So it was a war that kind of ended up having two names, and it was because it was fought on two continents. So in Europe, it was called the 7 Year War, and it was one of a lot of wars that they had against France. But in North America, it was called the French and Indian War. That's because in North America, the fighting included that third power, which was the Native Americans. The Native Americans who lived there kind of chose sides, whether it was French or British, during the war. So originally it started because Native Americans, well, first of all, they'd always had like a kind of stressed relationship with the colonists, right? They sometimes helped them, sometimes they were really frustrated by them. There were a lot of conflicts that arose. In 1675, Metacom, he was a Wampanoag leader in New England, began a war against the colonists in that region. He was called King Philip by the settlers, and so the conflict became known as King Philip's War. However, the colonists defeated Metacom, and many of his people died. A lot of the Native Americans didn't support Metacom in the war, and so some of them joined the colonists. The colonists were totally down to get the Native American help because obviously more people, you can battle more, you're stronger. But what they really wanted was Native American land. So as the colonies grew and settlers pushed west and they kept clearing woods and building towns, by the mid-1700s they had crossed the Appalachian Mountains to reach the Ohio River Valley. So there were a lot of powerful Native American groups that lived in that stretch. And the problem is that the French had also already claimed that area. So you have Native American tribes living there. You have French that have already claimed and said that they own this area, and you have the British colonies coming in and saying, okay, this is ours now. So lots of tension in one small area really set it up for what was bound to be another war. So the Ohio River Valley was a part of a huge region that the French explorer Robert de La Salle had claimed for France. And they had built a bunch of forts in the area to kind of protect their claim. But like I said, the British also thought that it was theirs. So they established a trading post nearby what would be Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania now. And they considered this area across the Appalachian Mountains to be part of the Virginia colony. But the French wouldn't give up their claim to the valley, and so the French soldiers then destroyed the British trading post and built another fort called Fort Duquesne. So in 1753, the British sent a small troop to the region. The leader was George Washington, and he saw that Fort Duquesne was really well guarded, so he was like, this plan is not going to work. We're definitely going to lose this if we attack it. And so instead, he fought a small French army that was in the woods nearby. They won that, and so then he was like, well, we'll just build our own fort here and call it Fort Necessity. But French soldiers who had Native American support attacked the fort and beat the British pretty fiercely. They did allow Washington and the other surviving soldiers to go back to Virginia. So at that point, the French and Indian War is full on. It got its name because the British colonies were fighting both the French and the Indians. So that's why they called it the French and Indian War. And the Native Americans really were an ally for France. They really did choose to basically stand on their side as military partners. The reason for that is they really didn't like the British. They came in, they were spreading really quickly, they were taking a lot of land, and so a lot of the Native American tribes were definitely going to go in the other direction, especially since France had claimed the area, but really just built a few forts there and hadn't done much else with it, so they didn't seem very invasive. But the British knew that having all the Native Americans on the France side was going to be a problem, so they really tried to get the Iroquois on our side because we knew that they were some of the most famous or most like strong warriors at that time. So at first the Iroquois were like, absolutely not. They're like, you're both fighting over land that we own. Why would we help either one of you? You're crazy. But then they decided to help the British anyways, because they were hoping that when the British won, they would then leave the Iroquois alone and let them continue to control the land. As we know, that did not end up working out for them. So in 1755, the British went back to Fort Duquesne, and they had a new general. He was called Edward Braddock, and Washington was his advisor. And they were really hoping that they would win it this time, but they were defeated again. So that didn't work. The British lost a lot of battles early on in the war, but things started to change in 1757 because British leaders sent reinforcements from Europe. So we got more troops, we got more military weapons, and so that made us a lot stronger, and we were finally able to capture Fort Duquesne in 1758. The Iroquois did decide to join us, so by that point we pretty much became unstoppable. So a big key battle was in 1759. We were able to capture Quebec, which was the capital of New France, and then the very next year we were able to capture Montreal, which was another French settlement in what's now Canada. So basically, by this point, they were beaten. We'd taken down their major areas. And so in 1763, France and England signed a treaty, which is basically like an agreement between countries that they're, not going to fight anymore because of blah, blah, blah. So in this treaty, France basically was like, look, fine, you can have pretty much all of what we claim in North America east of the Mississippi River. So the Ohio River Valley was now under British control. The problem was the Native Americans that had been on the France side were not happy. They did not like that they had lost, and they were not involved in the treaty at all. So they were pretty angry. And so in 1763, an Ottawa leader named Pontiac took action. He led an army that attacked British forts and villages all over the Ohio River Valley. However, the British did end up winning. It was called Pontiac's Rebellion, and even though we did win, it really scared British leaders, and so King George III issued an order called the Proclamation of 1763, where he said, look, we're not going to fight with these people, so you can't settle any land west of the Appalachians. We're not doing more wars. We just got out of this one, so you're just not moving into their space right now. You're going to stay over here on the east side of the Appalachians. And they were hoping that the Native Americans would take that as a peace sign and be chill with it. However, colonists were greedy, as we know, and they were basically like, we don't like your proclamation, and we were really excited about going west, so we're going anyways. And they continued to move into the Ohio River Valley area, which just continued making things more tense. So that is really our summary of the French and Indian War. I hope that helped.